So, today I am finally getting around to doing a video on line art, which I've been asked about quite a few times, so I'm glad to be finally getting around to doing this video. I'm going to go through firstly how I work, like specifically how I do line art, and then do some just more sort of general tips on what I think makes good line art. Obviously, it goes without saying that there are hundreds of different ways to do line art and indeed any aspect of artwork. This is just my opinion, what I've learned through my years of drawing. And if you happen to work in the completely opposite way from me, that's fine. Doesn't mean I think your art's bad, it's just not how I would choose to work. But, just keep in mind art's subjective, so basically you can do what you want. This is just what I think. Before I actually get into tips on doing line art, I just want to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion. The drawing that you can see me doing here, and will be what you see me do throughout this video, is actually a pay-to-use base that I currently have up for sale on my various accounts. I'll leave links in the description, places you can buy it, to use for adoptables or your own art. Like, you can draw your own character on this base and use it for whatever you want. I don't really care. But yeah, it's $5. So if anyone's interested, I'll leave links in the description. And it does come with a couple of little variations and sort of optional things, but all the information will be in the links. So yeah, just if anyone's interested, there you go. So on to the main purpose of this video. I'm firstly going to talk a little bit, as I said, about how I specifically do line art. My line art is quite stylised, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I work. I mean, it's really simple, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I firstly want to say, because I know somebody's going to ask, I use Procreate and I use the technical pen with the streamline set to 50 for basically everything. That is what I do my line art with. And I've spent quite a lot of time playing around with various different brushes. You can do it with literally any brush. Like, this style of line art I'm doing, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got a hard brush, and you can actually do it with a soft brush as long as you've got a hard eraser, but hard brushes work better. You can do this sort of line art. I think people sometimes get confused whether it's the brush itself that makes the line art look like this, because I sometimes get frustrated messages from people who I've told the brush to, and then they're still like, oh, I can't do line art like you. That's because it's not the brush, it's me. Like, it's just how I work rather than the brush itself. Just wanted to throw that out there. So yeah, technical pen, but any hard brush is fine. Now, I've purposely left this drawing clip on a very slow speed. Like, usually I speed all my drawings up quite a lot. This is only on ×2 sped up, so that you can sort of hopefully see kind of what I'm doing. My style relies quite heavily on variations in line weight being the thickness of the line, essentially. So what I do, I actually kind of sketch out my line art, as in I don't do like one smooth stroke unless it's for like a really rounded line. I sort of do a lot of little strokes, which most people will tell you not to do that, but that is what I do. It might not be the most efficient method, but it works for me. So I do a rough line, and then I spend a lot of time going back over every line I do, like erasing bits of it so the ends are quite sharp, and I will make other bits thicker. Switching quickly, this is the finished line art. I'm going to keep switching between the actual drawing and the finished thing just so I can point out various things. So I try and vary each line quite a lot and have the outside of the line, like this bit, quite angular, whereas the inside might be more rounded because it just adds like another level of variation. Like, where the line is as well depends how much I will erase it. Sort of, The outer lines, like here, I try and keep fairly thick, whereas what I consider to be like a secondary line, where it's just sort of a, you know, more detailed line, I'll make it thinner. So as well as varying the lines itself, try and add some variation to various aspects of the line art, like the fur not all going in the same direction and things like that. So I could basically sum up my entire line art style as variation. Just vary everything. Don't do like one solid line, if that makes sense. Or they are solid lines, but don't do just like one thickness or one direction. Switch it up a lot. The other thing I do, and this I'd say is not necessarily specific to me, like this is more of just a general tip, clean up your line art. And I don't mean just as in varying the line weight, I mean like the ends and stuff. Don't have like a really rounded end, unless obviously some people's styles do suit that, but mine doesn't. So if you've got like an end like this, like it looks better anyway if you clean it up a bit. And where you've got lines that meet and are connected to each other, like this, like make the inside bit kind of round rather than like pointed, if that makes sense. Like, well, I like that, don't have it really like sharp, have it sort of more rounded. And try and smooth out your line art as much as possible. Again, like bumpy line art looks messy. I mean, mine's not the smoothest, but I wouldn't say it's like super like lumpy either. I do try and get, if there's like any bits like that, I do try and erase them out when I'm doing the line weight. So that's pretty much all I have to say about how I specifically work, like how specifically to do my line art. It's really simple, just keep a lot of variation in the line weight and use quite angular lines, but you might have to draw a line and then make parts thicker, like manually by hand go back, draw a thicker part of the line, erase another part. It's quite tedious, but that's how I get my line art to look the way it does. So I'm going to move on to just some general tips. The first one being, have a good sketch. That sounds obvious, but I mean, have a sketch that is basically exactly what you want the line art to look like. Now, I don't always do that. So it's a case of do as I say, not as I do. Like, I don't do that because I'm kind of lazy, but I would really recommend that is what you do. Like, clean up your sketch so that you don't have to do a load of work figuring out how stuff's supposed to be when you're doing the line art. The next tip is don't do your line art in black. Yes, I know in this I am doing my line art in black, but again, do as I say, not as I do. Black line art, unless you've got like the world's darkest character, black line art's gonna look not that great because it's gonna really stand out against whatever colours you've got. So certainly if you want a slightly softer looking image, colour over your line art. Personally, I generally do my line art in black to begin with, unless I kind of know what the colours of the character are anyway. And then I will colour over the line art once I've done the colours of the character and any sort of basic shading, just so I know what sort of colours I need for the line art. Now, I know most people do know how to colour over line art, but sometimes I do get asked about it, and we were all beginners once, so I'm just going to quickly show you, if you don't know how to colour line art, what you have to do. It is so easy. The method I use to colour line art is, once you've got the colours that you're using for your character, colour pick them, and then create another layer above your line art and clip it to the line art layer. And then literally just colour over the line art, it's that simple. I then reduce the opacity of the coloured layer. I go to about 60. Generally speaking, I only colour sort of the inside lines, the actual outside lines, or anything where I need it to be darker, like to show like the division here between the leg and the chest. I would leave these lines quite dark, not black necessarily, but dark, just so that it's easier to see where one part of the body differs from another part of the body. And then once I've coloured in all the like little bits of line art that I'm going to colour, I do another layer on top of that, clip that, and then I pick usually pink, because I usually shade in pink or purple. Fill the line art with that colour, and then set it either to overlay or to colour burn or multiply, depending on what looks better for the character. And then reduce the opacity of that, just so it's slightly varies the colour from just being like a desaturated version of the character colours. The third point, I think it's the third, is don't have lines crossing or lines intersecting each other that don't actually meet. Again, I'm just going to quickly show you what I mean by that. For example, here where you've got like the bit of hair that's the other side of his face, don't have the end of it where it meets, or the other line sort of cross into here, if that makes sense. Don't have it up like that, so that the line for this bit of hair meets with it, because it makes it confusing to look at. Just as confusing as me explaining it has been, that's the visual equivalent. No, I hope this makes some sense to somebody. These two lines don't meet. This line and this line don't meet, so don't have them sort of merge into one line, is what I'm trying to say. So the next tip, again, is probably going to be fairly obvious, but use tools to help you. For example, Procreate has like the edit shape tool, where if you hold down on a line, it will give you the option to like move it about. And stuff like Photoshop, I think they have a pen tool and stuff. I used to use that when I used Photoshop. But don't be afraid to use things like that. I think when I first started out as an artist, I was always like, oh, I'm not going to use that because then it's like cheating. Like, no, it's there because it's useful to people. It's still you using it, it's still you drawing it, it's not cheating. It's just being sensible and using tools to help you with your artwork. There's nothing wrong with that. The next point I feel is fairly important. Keep in mind when you're doing your line art where you're shading and where markings on the character are going to be, because you don't want to be shading or colouring against the line art. You want to be able to colour in the same direction as the line art you've done. So it might help when you're doing the sketch to plan out the shading as well, so that you can almost line around the shading or line around the markings. To quickly show you what I mean again, here, this is obviously a separate image from the one the rest of the video has been, but to show you what I mean, like, I planned out the shading essentially when I was doing the line art for this. So all these like dark bits here, that is the line art, that's not shading I've drawn in after, that is the lines. I try and keep it, you know, all going in the direction of the shading. So you can do it either way around. Either plan out your shading and do the line art around that, or do the line art and then do the shading around that. But don't, like, obviously you've got the lines going here, basically, like, or the indication of lines going this way. So don't then try and, like, shade in that direction, like, against, if that makes sense. Don't do that. Shade in one direction, colour the markings in one direction. Don't sort of have them cross or not match. So my final point, some of you may be glad to know, well done if you've watched this far, is if something's not working, don't just keep sticking at it and keep redrawing the line, because you'll get frustrated. Just leave that part of the line art and go on to do something else. Like, personally, I find if something's not working, I go and do sort of another bit of the line art that's connected to it. For example, the hair, like, I think I started doing one bit of the hair first and then switched and started doing a different bit of hair, because once I'd done that bit, I could kind of see how the lines were going to connect to each other and how I'd be able to draw the bit that I was struggling with. Again, I hope that makes sense. I'm not the best person at explaining stuff, but I hope at least some of what I've said in this video makes sense to somebody. That would be really great. So yeah, that's it. That is my line art tutorial tip video, whatever you want to call it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try and answer as best I can. If you have any sort of feedback, positive or negative, feel free to leave that. I appreciate any comments and any likes, whatever. It's all good. I appreciate it all. Thank you. And if you do happen to buy this base and use it, please tag me, because I love seeing what people do with it. I've seen quite a few great adoptable designs made on this base so far. So yeah, I love seeing them and sharing them and stuff. So please tag me. Finally, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I hope you're staying safe and that you're doing okay and all that. Yes, thank you for watching. Have a good day.